asked, is there anyone whose point of view you don't enjoy writing?
I like all of the characters in them, even some of the ones who are like kind of sleazy and disagreeable people. But you know, when I am writing them, I get inside their skin and try to see why they do the things they do, because I don't think anybody gets up in the morning saying, what evil can I do today? I think people who do evil things or cowardly things, or they all have reasons for it. They all have their justifications why it's right, and so you crawl inside your skin and then you try to present it from their point of view. Each point of view has its own particular challenges, though, and it does take a certain amount of changing gears to go from one to the other. Like Tyrion is witty. He's very clever, and he makes clever comments, and that's good. But I have to think up all those witty lines, and sometimes I've said I'm not as witty as Tyrion. Well, of course, actually, I am as witty as Tyrion, because I think of every witty thing that Tyrion says is something I thought of. However, I don't think it up as fast as Tyrion. Tyrion tosses off these lines, and then I think of, in real life, I think of something witty to say 3 days later. I'll be 3 days from now, I'll think of something I could have said in this interview that would have been really cool, but damn it, I didn't think of it at the time. So the Tyrion chapters have to be constantly revised in order to make him wittier and make his dialogue a little sharper. And the first drafts are never quite there, and I have to polish them a little time and change something. And then of course sometimes you get it, it's just, you change it, and then you say, well, maybe the first version was better, and you go back to the first version, no, the second version was better, oh, wait a minute, what about this version? You come up with a third version. So that's a particular challenge of writing Tyrion, is getting the dialogue as sharp as I possibly can. On the other hand, writing a character like Victarion is not clever. Victarion is not the sharpest sword in the armory, but that has its own challenges, because you as author know what's going on, but you're telling it through the eyes of someone who doesn't really know what's going on. He thinks he knows what's going on, but he's actually kind of not entirely right. So, and he also has certain unpleasant personality flaws that come out, and then sometimes you're writing sort of ugly thoughts that he has that would appall your mother if she was sitting around. So that's another challenge. That's a different challenge. The hardest character to write for me has always been, almost from the first, and it was the first character I did write, is Bran. Bran is the youngest character, although it's getting a little, as he gets older, it's getting a little easier. But writing from the viewpoint of a young child is difficult, because you always say you have to look at every sentence and say, is this how a young child would see it? Would a young child, okay, he just heard his father say this thing, but does he actually understand what his father meant by it? Is he old enough or sophisticated enough to understand what's really being said there? Bran, of course, is also injured quite early in the books, and therefore is no longer mobile, and that of necessity enforces a certain passivity on him. He can't just hop on a horse and ride to the next town. He's kind of dependent on people carrying him around and taking care of him. That has its own challenges. And finally, Bran is the character who's most involved in magic. And magic requires very, very careful handling, or otherwise it can overwhelm your story and warp it in ways that you don't necessarily want it warped. So the Bran chapters require a particular lot of painstaking work.
Okay, here's the second one. This is from Krista Terides. How do you get into the mind of teenage girls so well? That's spot on.
See, I just thought of something extremely clever and Tyrion-like to say. But if I say it, it'll be all over the internet, and people will be denouncing me and pillaring me, and there'll be boycotts. It'll be horrible. I better not say what Tyrion would say about getting into the mind of teenagers. One of the things with all of the characters, I mean, there are many characters and there are many different characters, and I am not like them in certain aspects. So I get versions of this question. You know, how do you write? I mean, I got a letter a month or so ago from a writer, a fan, a reader who was a dwarf, and he likes the way I write Tyrion. He says, "Are you a dwarf yourself?" I'm not a dwarf. How do I write a dwarf then? How do you write someone who is different from you, who's a different sex than you, or a different color than you, or a different religion than you? Of course, all of these characters are different religions from me, because I'm basically an atheist, agnostic, lapsed Catholic, raised Catholic once upon a time, but I haven't practiced in a long time. And, you know, that's an important part of the worldview. How do I write from the viewpoint of a woman or whatever? The only answer to that, I think, is while we have these differences, I think we have far more in common with each other than we have differences. I mean, a teenage girl, or a dwarf, or a Dothraki warlord, or a bastard, whatever, they're all people. And they all have these common human motivations, and you know, we all want kind of the same things in life. You know, with a few cultural things, we all have our fears, we all have our joys. So it's that I think I use empathy, and I say, okay, what would it be like if I was a 11-year-old girl? You know, how would I feel about this? What would it be like if I was a dwarf? What would it be like if I was, you know, a bastard or whatever? And I try to do that best I can. Now, there are certain specific points of information where it is useful to consult someone who has experiences that you don't have. You know, and particularly in the case of 11-year-old girls, well, while I have never been an 11-year-old girl, I have known a number of women in my life, so I could go to them and I could ask them, well, what is this experience like? And it is useful in that case to try to ask more than one, because of course you quickly find that they may not report the same things. Different people may have very different experiences or very different attitudes towards things. When Bran was crippled in his fall, I did exchange a number of emails with one of my readers who was paraplegic, and asked him questions about you know, what would it be like, and he gave me a couple insights in his letters about things that I might not have thought of. That were useful to me, and sometimes you get that. At the same time, I recognize that sometimes I may get things wrong. There's no help for that. But of course, sometimes people say you get things wrong, and they're not necessarily they're the ones who are wrong, or at least they're the ones who are. There are no right or wrong answers to this. As I said, when you talk to several different people, you may get different answers. So then some angry fan writes you and said, well, this is the way you should have written that. Well, you know, that's their opinion, but you've talked to other people. So I don't know if that's the answer, but the question is, you just look at the common humanity. You rate them all. You know, women are people, people of different races are people, dwarfs are people, bad guys are people too. I mean, how do you create sympathy for someone who is a murderer or a rapist or whatever? Well, they've done awful things, but once again, they're a person. You know, they get hungry, they get scared, they have moments of joy and all that. So I always go back to the kind of trying to have a certain amount of empathy for the basic humanity of the character, whether it's a hero, a villain, or a great character, which is what I specialize in.
And here's the final one from Dimitri Louisou. Where in Westeros would you choose to live?
Where in Westeros would I choose to live? Boy. Well, I don't know. I would probably choose to be a lord, because I don't think it's much fun to be a peasant. There's some nice things to be said for Dorne. It's, you know, warm down there, and they have hot, spicy food, which I like. I've always liked hot, spicy food. And they have hot, spicy women, which
Spicy men as well.
So Dorne would be a good thing. Although I actually don't like it too hot, so I would probably like, you know, Winterfell is cold and frozen, but you know, I put hot springs there, so it's great. I used to have a hot tub. It broke, but in New Mexico. But we had a hot tub in our backyard for a number of years, and I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where despite Santa Fe is up in the mountains. So it's not, people who haven't been there often think it's like Phoenix or something like desert. It's not, it's mountains. And we have all four seasons, and we get snow in winter, sometimes quite a lot of snow, and we get cold temperatures. And I used to love going out to our backyard hot tub when it just snowed and it was freezing out, and you're in the hot water and the steam is rising from it, and icicles were forming in my beard and stuff like that. Being in the hot water, it was a tremendous thing, and I always visualized that Winterfell had areas like that in the Godswood and things like that, where the pools of hot mud and the warm, bubbling pools were coming up from the ground, and you know, Hodor enjoyed that, as you saw on a number of well, one scene in the TV show, but there's a couple of them in the books. I'm sure you all remember Hodor, and it was a prosthetic.
I think you'd like to join me in saying thank you so much, George.